Hello and good evening here. It is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, here on Best of the West, a podcast here for Blake Street Banner, talking all things NL West in another exciting week. I'm your host, Skylar Timmons, joined here once again, unlike last week, it's Kenneth Weber.
I've returned. I am back. And when you say talk about the NL West, do you mean talk about the Dodgers? Because just to talk about baseball means you talk about the Dodgers. This is kind of how it works right now.
The LA Dodgers West Division.
They're in a league of their own right now, but it is fun. We got some Hall of Fame talk, as well. We got Ichiro and Billy Wagner. So we got a couple inductees going in there. Ichiro, pretty cool. When we're Colorado guys, we had the 3,000th hit here in Colorado. Skylar, were you there for that?
No. What year did that happen anyway?
It was 2016. Obviously,
So-
everybody remembers probably going on the plaque, the the Miami Marlins hat. That's what he was wearing at the time. But,
probably.
yeah, I didn't get to see Ichiro's hit either, but I did see something kind of cool. That's an Ichiro story. When I went to spring training after I graduated high school, we were hanging out in Peoria where the Mariners and the Padres share a complex. And on the backfields, I actually saw Ichiro just throwing balls from center field to home plate. And that was weird. And that was kind of fun to just watch that for. Come to find out, I was witnessing a commercial being filmed of Ichiro pitching from center field. And you see like the outtakes and everything. But I didn't watch the whole thing and the whole production and everything. But I did get to kind of see Ichiro tossing seeds and strikes from center field, which was a very real thing.
Yeah, there you go. No, I was on a mission in Oregon in 2016, so removed from the baseball world during those 2 years. But when it comes to Ichiro specifically, it was always just like you knew of the name. And so I just knew he played for the Mariners. I remember when he got traded to the Yankees, I was like, that's weird. And then I just remember him as a Marlin, but it was always like I was just aware of Ichiro and like Ichiro was number one. And so I never have any like specific memories, but I've always just known of Ichiro. I knew like that slap swing from the left side that everybody imitated. I know I certainly did. If I ever swung from the left side, like, yeah, you just get the running start with Ichiro. But yeah, it's as I've gotten older and like looking back on his career, and I remember, when his final season right before he retired, it was when they're going to have it was either just a Japan exhibition game or like one of those opening day, early March games.
Yeah.
And he made that starting roster with the Mariners, started the game, didn't play for very long in it. But kind of just his send off there with the Mariners to close out his career, being able to retire basically in Japan. That's the memory that sticks with me of Ichiro, just that full circle moment for him of being a dominant star in Japan, comes to the States and becomes a dominant star in the States. And then for that to come full circle where he's able to return back and retire was really cool. I remember seeing that when it happened.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that Japanese series with the Mariners and him cracking the roster. He wanted to play forever, and that was a cool thing. Celebrity is a weird thing when it's for baseball players because sometimes it becomes too much. It's a stigma. You can love watching Alex Rodriguez play baseball, but when you have to deal with A-Rod, the celebrity,
Yeah.
Ichiro is an icon. Ichiro is he's just going to go down as one of the most beloved figures in baseball history. It's a great what if too, in terms of had he been here the entire time, is he the all-time hit king? There is something to that with his career. So, but it was a crazy thing to witness. And I remember when he showed up in 2001, I mean, it was a whole different scene. I got to watch pretty much his entire career, and it was amazing. I also got to go to a Mariners game in 2001, the year they set or tied the single season wins record, and they got absolutely smoked by the Yankees. So there was one Mariners game I went to in their record-setting season, they get nailed. But he's an all-timer. CC Sabathia and Billy Wagner also just great accumulation stats. One of maybe the last of a dying breed with Sabathia in terms of like numbers and accumulation. And then Billy Wagner, the most dominant left-handed reliever since at least the Aroldis Chapman. So that's someone who I think deserves to get in.
Yeah, no, all three perfectly. It was Sabathia. I was again kind of always just aware of him. I was like, yeah, Sabathia. He's not that good.
Oh,
After he's retired, and like I've looked back and looked at his career, I'm like, okay, no, he's actually pretty good.
for some younger folks too, if you want a reality shock, go look up. There is video out there of like CC Sabathia pitching in the futures game, because everybody remembers the durable, big hulking lefty. He's a big dude, massive dude.
Hmm.
But that was him for the majority of his career, especially with the Yankees. There was a time when CC Sabathia came up when he was an absolute freak. It was like kind of just Dontrell Willis without all the knees and elbows and just pure nasty. And he was a guy from the get-go, and the
Hmm.
fact that he had the longevity of his career, not many pitchers have that anymore. So he's a career that you're fortunate to get to watch, and that's the position I'm in.
Yeah, no, it's good. All three very deserving. A lot of names that came close. They'll probably get in within the next year or so. Uh, for the sake of this show, a couple of our Rockies guys were on the ballot. They fell off. Carlos Gonzalez, Troy Tulowitzki. They didn't get shut out though, Kenneth, which
Six
I'll
total?
take it. I
Was it
will
six
take it.
total votes? Two for Cargo, four for Tulo?
I believe so.
Yeah, is how it played out. Eh, it's a bummer that that's all that era amounts to,
Yeah.
because there was a legitimate time there where you had the best infielder and the best outfielder in baseball in the same team in the same lineup, and it just the health was never there, it never panned out, yada yada. But um, that the way that ended out was pretty rough, but there was some representation, which was nice.
Yeah.
Ben
No.
Zobrist got zero, which I think is going to be in hindsight a crime.
Yeah.
Which, like, dude, Zobrist, they created a new classification because of Ben Zobrist,
Hmm.
like officially. And so I think he's someone who's going to get recognized. Is Ben Zobrist for sure a Hall of Famer? I probably not. I wouldn't think so. But he has a much stronger case than you realize. He's just one of those guys that is a goose egg is wrong,
Yeah.
and for him to not stay on the ballot. So that was, I guess, maybe my one gripe with the whole thing too.
Yeah. But across the board, though, at least it's just nice to be recognized,
Yeah,
even
never
just
a
for a little bit.
Dodger, never a Dodger. Ben Zobrist too. So that should
Yeah.
have at least gotten him a vote.
Yeah. Exciting stuff with the Hall of Fame, and congrats to all those inductees and everything. It's going to be a fun induction class in July, adding in Dave Parker and the late Dick Allen. A good class going in here in 2025. But Kenneth, we got a lot of other stuff to talk about here. As well, like you alluded to, the Dodgers just keep doing stuff. They just won't stop. Nobody can stop them at this point. I saw a meme saying they've signed Pablo Sanchez from Backyard Baseball. He's also on a deferred contract, so they're just putting together the best team ever created. They're playing franchise mode with just easy mode,
Yeah, the no
forcing
budgets turned off. If they really wanted to, I'm sure the trades are they have an override too or
forced
something.
trades, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Sasaki. So Sasaki is the biggest news right now with him, but they also have a couple sightings since then. It it's like Otani. It always made sense for Sasaki to go to the Dodgers. It boiled down to the Dodgers, the Padres, and I believe the Blue Jays were that. The Blue Jays were the weird wild card. Maybe they would have been the Angels to Otani, being that for Sasaki. I think the Padres were legitimately and genuinely close. And I think it all came down to not even the money, because one, the Padres could have offered more, but two, it was kind of a moot point with Sasaki's
Mhm,
situation in the first place. The Dodgers are clearly wanting to win and doing whatever it will take to win, while also being recognized for being an organization that is good at developing talent and also acquiring talent
mhm,
if it needs to. I mean, they just check every single box, and they're upping the bar by also financially showing that they want to win too. So everybody hates it. Everybody's annoyed with it. They made a couple of signings to bolster their bullpen right afterwards, which was just a cherry on the top. But this is objectively good for Sasaki's career. This is the best place for him to go to. And it makes other teams look bad because everybody wants to go to the Dodgers. One, because they know it's best for their career, and two, they also know it's their best opportunity to win.
mhm.
So that's, as a fan, where everybody's thinking that baseball has a Dodgers problem. The Dodgers are just really raising the bar. in my opinion. And I think somebody like Sasaki is attracted to that bar that they're setting for the rest of the league.
Yeah. It's been an interesting couple of months, and you can understand a lot of people across the game being frustrated by it's the Dodgers again. Of course, it's the Dodgers. Of course, they get Sasaki.
The
They
guys
already
that
got
just
Otani.
won the World Series, you know.
Yeah, of course they got Otani and Yamamoto last offseason. Of course, they get the top international prospect, who is now the ranked by Baseball America the new number one prospect in baseball this year. So of
Surprise.
course it's the Dodgers, and it, part of you can't help but feel like it was just a wild goose chase. And what was the point of talking with all these other teams if really the consensus was he'd end up in LA anyways? And you had Joel Wolf, his agent out there saying, "Oh well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big market. It could be a small market. He could probably benefit from that because of like the media, you know, conflicts he had in Japan and kind of getting harassed by the media a little bit." So there was that, and maybe gave some teams some hope, like, "Oh, maybe we can check in. It could work out." But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he goes to, like you said, the place that just makes the most sense. The best team in baseball, the best run organization in baseball, with already uber talent, endless resources. If they wanted him, of course they got him.
hmm I obviously we're not going to be privy or a fly on the wall in these conversations, in these negotiations, in the whole
Mhm,
process. So who's to say what the deciding factors were? But if I'm going to take a step back and look at it, obviously everybody expected the Dodgers from the get-go, but there's no reason not to leave the door open for other organizations to come in and wow you and impress you with their pitch, not only on why, let's say, a Milwaukee or a Cleveland or a Seattle is a good place for Roki Sasaki to go to for his career. Look at our record with pitching development, ballpark situation. Maybe you don't have this media frenzy the same way you would if you
mhm,
got into the big market. All these other selling points could be there. What are the Mariners doing to improve that offense to make them a World Series team?
mhm,
How has Cleveland gotten any better this year by trading away Josh Naylor?
mhm.
Milwaukee lost their best hitter in Willie Adames. What are these teams doing to also show that they're wanting to win? That's the other half of the equation that the Dodgers are clearly flexing their muscle to. The Dodgers, if they wanted to, could have gone out and signed Juan Soto this year, but they
Yeah.
kind of just didn't even go around that. But everybody's still walking away from this offseason saying, good God, the Dodgers make them.
Mhm,
It's the Bryan Cranston gif. You can't keep getting away with this. The Dodgers are checking every box, and also maybe a deciding factor was, are you in a good position to win? Well, yeah, we also just added some more around the edges to an already World Series team. Plus, we can match your development as well as any other organization out there.
yeah, there was that report coming out that the teams meeting with him had a homework assignment of, "Hey, why did my velocity dip last season?" Partly it's because he had some injuries too in 2024, but how would you fix it going forward?
Okay,
And obviously, we can assume how the Dodgers did on that test,
sure.
on that homework assignment, probably an A plus right there. And like you said, it's just an attractive place for a player to go to, best for his career. If would him coming to Colorado have been good for his career? Probably not. He's maybe an okay pitcher, but probably not the best for his career. With the Dodgers, he has the best chance of success, and it's just a perfect situation for him and familiarity. He's got Yamamoto, Otani there too, so culturally, it's a good place for him. Yeah, the media contingency will still be there, but maybe Otani and Yamamoto will take some of that heat away from him and kind of help him through that as well. But it's frustrating if you're just a fan, a naughty Dodgers fan. But hey, Sasaki's here in the States, and we're benefit here in the NL West. We'll get to see him pitch a lot more than maybe some other teams. So it is what it is. But man, you can't help but feel a little disappointed.
Yeah, in a ideal world, you have a couple other teams on that
Yeah.
same tier with the Dodgers that give some more variety and more selection.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that there aren't still some teams out there. I think Philadelphia is an extremely attractive option as a free agent. Are they spending the money necessarily? Who knows? So there are in Atlanta, there's a Philadelphia. The Yankees are still the Yankees. The Mets just signed Juan Soto. There are some attractive options, but are they going to show that they're willing to go as far as the Dodgers are right now?
Yeah.
No, nobody else has. And so they're just setting a new standard. And I like it. I appreciate it. I think more teams are now going to have to live up to that level. And it's going to create more competitive baseball. And it's also better for the players in the long run. So while it's boring that it's the Dodgers again, ultimately this is going to force some other organizations to up their game
Mhm.
to compete with the Dodgers. And I do respect that.
Yeah. And that is something that we'll touch on in a little bit more in a little bit, but sticking with Sasaki specifically here, he's an international free agent, so he's akin to all those rules. Now, Dodgers roughly paying about 7.8 million in total between a signing bonus and then the posting fee.
Mhm.
About 8 million in total, which any team could have afforded that,
Yes.
especially the Dodgers, who were at the bottom of the bonus pool and
Mhm.
had to trade away a couple guys to get some more money back. But pretty easily, and his contract will be league minimum playing in the big leagues this season, and is under the same 6-year control window of the 3 renewals and then the arbitration. And there are some stipulations before the Dodgers can even approach extension talks and that kind of thing at the.
Mhm.
But that brings up the question: the Dodgers are so deep, and they seem to always have so many options. Does Sasaki begin the season on the opening day roster? I'd say yes.
I think it's hard for me not to believe that that was a requirement for any team, is
Yeah.
that you start that service time right away with him.
Hmm.
So will it remains to be seen, but that has to be part of it, is getting that clock started right away on the big earnings. And so I would imagine yes, and I would imagine that he's at the back end of the rotation. I think ultimately it's going to be a who's who of who's healthy for the most part,
Hmm.
because that's the way any breaking camp works with any team. But the Dodgers also have their pick of the litter, so you probably ease into it slowly with Otani. I would be surprised if Otani is a rotation pitcher from the get go. So that leaves you with Blake Snell, which, by the way, remember when the Dodgers signed Blake Snell? Because that's part of this offseason too. So
That's old news, Kenneth.
yeah, right. So you have Snell, Yamamoto, Glass now, and then Sasaki kind of goes in as a 4 with whoever's healthy of a Gonsolin, May, Otani in there too. I think is how it shakes out.
It feels like maybe they'll, in a sense, that next question of how he's deployed by Los Angeles. They kind of work with that five, kind of a pseudo 5-6 man rotation,
Mhm.
like you're saying, kind of easing Otani in more and more, and well, it's Sasaki because they're so used to the 6-man rotations there in Japan. So the Dodgers have those options of kind of working guys in and and sizing guys out, giving them rest because like you're saying, there's a lot of as chock full as that rotation is, there's injury concerns across the board.
Yeah.
And even Sasaki, no, he hasn't been a workhorse, but the Dodgers can afford, they'll take those trade-offs of, oh, this guy hasn't thrown more than 100 innings in last 4 seasons. That's okay. We'll just take the dominance where we can and fill in the gap with an elite bullpen that we'll touch on in a second.
Yeah, they're okay with like the partial season ticket plan with
Mhm.
some arms out there too. So yeah, Sasaki, he's 23. Like that's one of the most appealing parts about him coming over
Mhm.
stateside is how young he is at the time of doing it. But with 23 and never eclipsing 130 innings, his last 3 years he's gone 129, 91, and 111 innings in Japan. So it's not like he's been bulking up these huge totals already and he's a finished product in terms of endurance and stamina. So he'll probably be eased into it, but you're probably looking at Bobby Miller being a bounce back. They still have Emmett Sheehan. they'll have their options and they'll plug and play as much as they need to. But I think Sasaki is ideally a fixture of the rotation pretty much all season and maybe flirting around 150 innings for the year.
Yeah, good point here by Ron Nintendo 77. No, Dodgers don't play service time manipulation games with their players. Yeah, if you're performing, you're up. You're ready to lock it in. They're not gonna. They can afford to they don't have to worry about. Oh, we're gonna try to hold on to him for an extra year. Like no, they're gonna deploy that guy if they can.
It's part of the reputation too. Your reputation gets hurt amongst free agents if you like to tinker with service time or anything like that, or you just you're not player friendly in the same way. Nobody's had a problem signing with the Dodgers, so clearly they have a pretty good reputation about being considerate of players and their earnings too.
Yeah,
and something like service.
they got that sense of urgency. We're here to win, 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 baby.
Yep.
And it's part of that reputation and works out for them. And part of that is they get Sasaki. They didn't waste any time. They're like, all right, what's next? They don't dwell on those things. Because Kenneth, it was like the day after or a couple days after, who do they go? Well, they go out and get the top relief arm on the market in Tanner Scott on a nice little deal for old Tanner Scott to just add in to the rest of what was already shaping up to be a pretty solid bullpen. It gets even better with the addition of Tanner Scott. And let's not forget Kirby Yates, also reportedly in agreement with the Dodgers, which I found was funny. There's a reporter like, oh, the Dodgers had interest in Kirby Yates before they signed Tanner Scott. Well, they just went ahead and got Kirby
And
Yates
still
as well.
did it. They didn't say the interest was finished. They were just expressing that they had interest in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, it's finishing touches on there. Ohtani, it's kind of funny adding Tanner Scott specifically because like this dude owns Ohtani at the plate, which is kind of funny because out of anything else, they made sure they signed the one guy that couldn't stop their best player come playoff time. Is really what it was. And it was a pretty sweet deal for it. Now, obviously, Tanner Scott's a very good pitcher. Tanner Scott's a great left-handed reliever, hard against both sides, but basically kryptonite against lefties. Good signing. But now they just made themselves better by getting rid of somebody who's good against Ohtani, too. So it's wild. They're on a different level, man. 4D chess.
Yeah, it's like that episode of The Office where Michael Scott hires Timothy Oliphant. It was like the competing salesman because he was so good and kept beating him.
Ohtani all time against Tanner Scott, regular season and playoffs, 14 plate appearances, a 111, 200, 111 triple slash with 7 strikeouts. 50% strikeout rate and basically like a single. So, or a double, whatever. So, yeah, it's the Dodgers, man. Like they can also go bullpen by committee. I think that they're also a good organization when it comes to that bullpen management side. And these are two really good arms that they can slot in along with a Trinan, along with Kopech. Who knows if Gratterall's healthy, but it's depth within the bullpen. And I think that we talked about picking and choosing starters throughout the course of the year to use. They'll do that with bullpen pieces too. So it makes them stronger in every facet of the game.
Yeah, no, adding on more guys to a bullpen. So you have Michael Kopech, you got a bunch of other guys ready to go in that bullpen. And like we were saying, it's going to help bolster and kind of maybe pick up some slack where, there's maybe some questionable longevity in that rotation. Maybe guys going 4, maybe 5 innings of dominance. Then we can hand it off to the bullpen who's primed to carry the game the rest of the way.
Yeah, and then when you also look at some roles to help limit the innings, I don't think the Dodgers would be a team that wants to do a hard cold turkey shutdown for Sasaki. I think maybe they could stretch him out as a long reliever at a couple of points throughout the season too. So if that bullpen starts getting a little thin in moments, hey, we can mitigate some of that workload for Sasaki over the course of the year by letting him work out of the pen a little bit too. So I wouldn't put that past the Dodgers in their plans for this year.
Real quick, touching back on Sasaki, Nintendo was asking about seeing the press conference where he basically slapped the Padres in the face with his response of why he chose the Dodgers. I did not catch a lot of it, but I'm trying to pick up stuff here on the on MLB.com about his press conference. But did you catch anything about Sasaki, Kenneth?
No, I didn't. I unfortunately didn't really see the remarks about it. The big thing that I saw catch fire was the images of Sasaki going out and pitching, or out in Petco. Um, The Padres are also in a really weird spot. We touched on this earlier when it comes to the death of their owner, the flux that the organization is in right now. I was watching something on Juan Soto, and Scott Boras is on record basically saying that if it wasn't for Seidler's passing, Soto probably would have been a lifelong Padre. I don't know if that went into it, and maybe that's something Sasaki mentioned, but that is something. I think just that the management is in flux right now with Seidler's death, and so that's probably reflected in Sasaki's statements.
Yeah, he said, I think the number one thing that stood out was the stability of the front office.
Preller's
And
doing everything he can to win now too.
yeah,
So one thing that has been going on for the Padres for a minute, how many prospects have high risk, high reward prospects have they brought in to immediately turn around and flip for the best player that they can go out and get? And
yeah,
so that is one thing with Preller where he kind of has that reputation like a Dipoto of a gunslinger. And so
yeah,
man, Padres, that window for winning a championship, eventually somebody's going to have to pay the price if they don't. And it's
yeah.
probably
And
somebody like Preller. So,
as we all that stuff we've talked about before with just the soap opera behind the scenes and the fighting in between
mhm.
the family and everything. So, it's a messy situation like we've talked about before where you hoped it wouldn't impact the product on the field. Well, it probably had an impact on missing out on the top one of the
Yeah.
top pitchers in the world.
And hey, way back, would Freddie Freeman have come to the Dodgers if he knew that there was this clubhouse problems going on, or messes within the ownership, or front office structure? Would Mookie Betts have signed up to stay basically a Dodger for the rest of his career after they acquired him from bringing it in? Would Otani have chosen? So again, it's just a better reflection of why the Dodgers are awesome, is because you don't have to worry, even with everything else being equal, about some mess like that too going on with the organization from the top down. So,
Yeah.
hey, lesson learned. It should be for the rest of the league.
The point is that the Dodgers are a destination teams want to go to. They get Sasaki on roughly about 7 million signing bonus, and then Tanner Scott on roughly deferred money in a 4-year, $72 million deal, $20 million in deferred payments. They love those deferrals.
Yep.
So they add them, keep spending. And this brings us to this thing we wanted to touch back on. With the Dodgers being really the best players on paper, the best team on paper, are they a lock for the World Series now? Even more so with the additions of Sasaki and Tanner Scott.
No, nobody's ever a lock for the World Series, and that's why the playoffs are great. It's a total crapshoot when you think you have a World Series lock guarantee. The 2019 Nationals come out of nowhere and they humble you. So, I don't do a ton in terms of researching gambling odds, but it wouldn't surprise me at all, and I think it would be very deserved if they came into the season as the best World Series favorites ever, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
line, because of how stacked they are. But if it comes down to the Dodgers versus the field, peak Tiger Woods rules that we're playing, I'm taking the field still, just because. Hey man, if the Padres get hot, they figure their stuff out and they want to go full little brother in a best of three with the Dodgers, or 3 out of 5, they could knock the Dodgers out. It could
Mm-hmm.
absolutely happen. So I still take the field, but man, this is probably the best any team has put themselves in position to winning a World Series. And honestly, I'm starting to feel more and more like I'm seeing the late 90s Yankees again.
Mm-hmm.
Is really what's coming to mind. They've done a lot of good things. Maybe they didn't quite have a Jeter and a Williams in there, but when they wanted to go out and add a Clemens and an O'Neill, they made sure they added a Clemens and an O'Neill and anybody else to help bolster their opportunities to be a championship club. And that's what the Dodgers have been doing. And dude, we're in the midst of possibly a dynasty,
Yeah.
I think, is what's going on.
Yeah. And that's what it can feel like when, seeing a stat looking where the Dodgers haven't won less than 80 games since 2005. So for the last 20
Okay.
years,
Yeah.
they haven't won less than 80 games in that time span. And so it's easy to take them, saying that you view them on paper like, oh yeah, this team's going to be the World Series favorites, best team in baseball. But I think that's the beauty of baseball is there's so many unknown variables through a 162 game season when it comes to the regular season and the playoffs, two different seasons of baseball really. And this note here, since the start of 2000, only 6 teams with the best regular season record have won the World Series. And the Dodgers, just doing it last season, were the 6th team since 2000 during the 21st century.
Yeah, which is wild. And I also think that the Dodgers are a good example. I think they have no concern about having the best record in baseball aside from home field advantage, but
Mhm,
setting records they accidentally find themselves into 110 wins when their real prerogative is just to win, whatever the required amount is and then get ready for the real season come the playoffs. So,
mhm.
um it's a different level, man, but it's just a well-run team. And I think it's hard to imagine anybody else really taking this division from them at this point. Like, it's
Mhm.
hard to make any sort of case. I think that there are some good teams, and I think that San Diego, Arizona, and possibly San Francisco are in positions to be wild card teams. But realistically, I don't think there's anybody out there that can say division favorites is the bare minimum for what the Dodgers are in
Yeah,
baseball. If not, you know. So that's the expectation. And then just when they get to the playoffs, it's how healthy and how much of a juggernaut can they make themselves.
absolutely. It seems more like here's the question for you. Do the Dodgers how close do they get to meeting the Mariners' win record?
At 116. Yeah. I'd say I'd say they finish within 10 games of it, but they still fall short. So they're somewhere within 5 to 10 short of it kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
again, once you're over 100, what is what's the difference in the number?
Yeah.
And it's so weird and wild to say what can happen, but man, 116 wins is a lot of wins.
Yeah.
It's like a lot.
Then yeah, we got some chats there in the comments like, yeah, they'll
Hell,
probably try to make a run for it, but
I
I'm
thought
kind of with you, Ken.
120 losses was too many to ever
Yeah.
see. So what do I know? What do I know? But I can't confidently actually say I expect a team to win 116 games. I just can't say it.
Yeah, it
But
just the
they'll
league
give it a good chance.
the league is so different now. I think just with everything, it's just hard to post up and get all those wins nowadays. Just because of the level of talent, you run into a
Yeah,
team that's just hot at the right time, and you lose a couple, and you get into a little bit of a bad stretch. But the Dodgers will get in too many bad stretches probably if everything goes their way. But
sure.
definitely try to make a run for it.
I don't see major, "Oh god, look at the Dodgers August" kinda
Yeah.
thing ever happening over the course of the season, but not every league champion is made equal too. There are some pretty terrible years in a national or American league respectively. Like, there have been some conversations with being Colorado guys of the National League in 2007. It was pretty bad, and so that allowed some teams to come in. You don't have that many bad teams in the National League. You have some stout competition within the division. You can look at 3 teams, if not 4, who knows what the hell happens with Miami this year, in the East that are good teams. So,
Mhm.
and you're playing everybody, so
Yeah.
there's not as many bad teams, it's better competition. That's another reason why I would say 116 is unrealistic, but this is a good team. If anybody's going to do it, wouldn't be surprised if it's this team.
Yeah. But yeah, they're gonna have a go of it still, and they'll be the best on paper, and it's everybody looking up at them, and kind of what you were alluding to before of everybody else elevating their game, and this brings up this next question specifically here in the National League West of for the rest of these teams in the division, San Diego, San Francisco, and Arizona specifically, because who knows what they're doing at 20th and Blake in
Mhm.
Denver. Uh, how do you handle your baseball operations when the Dodgers are in your league and the way they operate? Because you're looking up at a juggernaut. No, there's a Goliath, and then there's a bunch of little Davids.
Yeah.
Varying versions of David, but they're all
Sure.
still Davids compared to the juggernaut Goliath. How do you handle your team when you're
You
facing the Dodgers in your division?
you just try to make the best team you possibly can. And that's yes, the Dodgers are going to be superior to you, maybe in terms of their assets and resources, but that doesn't give you a full out to not try.
Mhm,
And I think honestly, you can make the accusation with some teams um, that they're not doing what it takes to fully win. But each team is going to operate independently, and ideally, you just go out and you try to better your organization. You look at Arizona going out and picking up a Corbin Burns this year.
mhm,
That's a huge piece for somebody like them, and that's not some mild investment. They paid big to bring in Burns. Obviously, San Francisco's had money burning a hole in their pocket for a while now, but they went out and they made their moves by bringing in Adames, being able to bring in Verlander. They might still bring in on Alonso. So again, you probably let the division go is what it is because again, that's that minimum for the Dodgers. These are playoff teams, and then you get to the playoffs and you can beat the Dodgers
mhm.
in a best of 5 or a best of 7 series, and you just create the best team. And I know it's not within the division, but somebody who has been very excellent at that for the past couple of years is Philadelphia. And
Mhm.
so I think that's just got to be the motto for other teams.
Yeah,
And I think most in the National League West are trying to do it outside of the Rockies, who are just waiting, I guess, for baseball to reset or something.
yeah. And the way I always looked at it or look at it is, you have the Dodgers at the top of your division. They're the team to try and take down that you're chasing. You can make 2 choices. It's either you just give up and punt and you're just give up on it
Hmm.
entirely of even trying to compete with them, or you try to elevate your game and try to compete with them, chase them down, get that competition, let that fuel you to play better, to try and improve better as your team, running better or run the team better as an organization. And like you mentioned, we've seen the Diamondbacks, we saw the Padres that get to where they are now by wanting to keep pace with the Dodgers and elevate their competition. I'm sure none of these teams like the fact that the Dodgers have been the the divisional champ pretty much the last decade. Aside from that time, the Giants won it somehow.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Magic Beans year with the
Yeah,
Giants aside.
but I'm sure none of these teams, they shouldn't accept that, and I'm sure none of them do, or most of them don't, but let that elevate you. You like you're saying, you can't compete with the Dodgers, their resources, but you can try to emulate and just try to keep pace with how you run with that urgency
Yeah.
and like, "Hey, we're gonna win games, we're gonna get to the playoffs." That's the goal. If we take down the Dodgers in the process, heck yeah, baby. That's just icing on the cake. But if we are going to compete and get better, chasing after the Dodgers and try to keep pace with them in a tough division, that's just going to make you better as an organization.
Mhm. It's realistically, do you wanna be a title contender or do you wanna be a playoff team?
Yeah.
I think you can the Padres are in a weird spot, but if you take the past, let's say, 5 years into consideration as a whole, they have been chasing trying to be a title team.
Mhm.
I think the Giants have kind of been in between for the most part, and the Diamondbacks, you mentioned kind of the lineage or the vicious cycle of life where the Diamondbacks did notice for a while there. They're like, you know what? We don't want to try against these guys anymore. We're
Mhm.
gonna just go away for a little bit, and we're not because the Dodgers are just smoking us. We're not there. And then they've risen back up, and now they won the National League 2 years ago, and went to the World Series. So, and now they're investing and putting their foot down. Overall, you have 3 of the 4 teams in this division trying to chase down the Dodgers in their own way for the most part, but at least they're trying to do it. And again, just because the Dodgers make all these moves and they're this Disney World for baseball players and their careers and this utopia does not mean that they are going to be the World Series champions in 2025. I
Mhm.
would say, honestly, you look back over the past 7 years, how many of those years heading into the regular season should the Dodgers have been the favorites to be the World Series champions heading into that year? the vast majority.
Yeah, quite a few of them.
Honestly, you've had the Astros run in there a little bit, but for the most part, the Dodgers have already been in this place, and now they're just bolstering their case even more. So that's the way that this offseason went, and I think that it's going to be a long year, but they're not the only playoff team in this division. That's for damn sure. And
Yeah,
most of the division has done a good job of putting themselves in the picture for playoff teams this offseason, just not the giants that the Dodgers have become.
exactly. And like I said, you just got to get invited to the dance, and then it's all up in the air. Who knows
Yep.
what happens? Where the
Yep.
random Arizona Diamondbacks a couple years ago make the run, and all of a sudden they're in the World Series. So anything can
Who
happen there.
do you think this division has the most playoff teams in the National League this year?
It gets tough because you always look at that NL East, which is always very sneaky because you got
Yeah.
3 teams there that are really pushing. No, so it's gonna come down to those 2 divisions because the Central is just always weird. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's gonna be tough because you'll have the Dodgers, and then there'll be those roughly like 4 maybe 5 teams competing for the 3 wild card spots.
Yeah. How true the Mets are as a roster as a whole. I think Juan Soto is going to be great, and they're going to be a competitive team. I don't know how I feel about that rotation. So I could make the case that there's 3 teams with 1 wild card coming out of or 2 at least coming out of the West with 1 out of the East with Philadelphia.
Mhm,
But I don't know. So it's interesting right now because there's a lot of paper champions going on, and a lot of that is in the West. Um, how much are they going to beat up on each other? How much is that going to bring down
mhm.
these overall records of these 4 teams to the rest of the National League? That could totally be a thing this year that negatively impacts the Dodgers.
Yeah, no, 13 games per team in your division, so
Mhm.
and the Padres and the Diamondbacks have given the Dodgers some trouble, or at least
It
kept pace
could,
with them.
dude. It could be who beats the snot out of the Rockies the most.
Oh, no.
That determines some things. So like that could be a world. It's shaping up to be an interesting division more so, just because of the depth of the teams. The more I think about it,
Yeah,
you don't have many easy outs aside from where we are.
mhm. But now it makes me wonder, like, specifically with the Padres, of what do they do now? They it seemed like Sasaki was their big last kinda effort to try to bring somebody in this season. What do they do now? Do they, kinda do it like we were saying and try and keep the course and just try to compete this year? Or do they start, putting in the back of my mind like, "Oh, probably need to start moving some guys and just bracing for the future ahead and just continue to cut the payroll until we that ownership situation gets figured out."
Yeah, there's too much unknown, I think, on the ownership side to you don't know what you need to slash the budget to until you know what the budget is. And I
Yeah.
don't think that that's necessarily where the Padres are at. So there's too much in flux, I think, to say for sure this is the direction. Ideally, if you're already locked into the rest of Machado, plus you have Tatis and Bogarts. Bogarts probably not going to go well the longer it goes, but that's the reality. It's there. The Columbus Blue Jackets, for people that aren't hockey fans, are notoriously garbage, and for the most part, just don't have much success throughout their history. But there was one year, I want to say it was 2021, or 2019, maybe, where they just decided, you know what, we have a bunch of impending free agents. We're just going to go for it. We're just put it all out there, find whatever success we can. They end up making the playoffs, bounce the Lightning. Great, they had their fun, and then the inevitable rebuild had to occur. I say, you know what, just let it ride at this point with the Padres. Whatever time you have left, let Preller gut the organization as much or as little as he can to put the best major league product on the field each year. That's the situation you are, and make the most of your time to win, because there might be a time where you're just not a competitive team anymore, and you look back a year or two ago and remember some good times. So do the most with what you can now. That would be my advice for the Padres.
Yeah, pretty interesting. And like we're getting some news here that Dennis Lynn, the Padres reporter for The Athletic, has said the Twins have discussed trading Christian Vasquez to the Padres. Potentially.
Okay. Christian Vasquez is not a needle mover for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So okay, that's great. Good catching depth. Catching in its own right is it's you're not really looking for that to be an offensive piece, a big game changer for it. You're looking for that to help your pitching staff with a Vasquez and maybe get some offense along the way. So great. If you would come at me with the Astros or dangling Christian Javier, okay, now we're talking. Christian Vasquez from the Twins, okay, it just makes them
Yeah.
a little bit better of the team overall depth wise, but that's fine.
Yeah. But it's like these. It feels like these moves that aren't going to be the needle movers for them, but
That's a needle mover for me for Minnesota because Minnesota
yeah,
already proved that they didn't have enough depth by completely collapsing last year. And now, if they're just going to continue to subtract more pieces this offseason, we talk about the bar being raised. Minnesota, and honestly, this is the stigma of teams in the Central. The Dodgers make a lot of teams look bad in baseball, but a lot of teams in the Central just try to weaken or win the weakest division by the
yeah,
lowest means possible. And that's how you get like a White Sox team. So,
yeah,
if Minnesota is going out there and trading major league players, they're doing it because of money, and that's not a good thing, a good look for the Twins.
yeah, yeah. Vasquez set to make $10 million in the final year of his deal, so not a great deal. But replace Kyle Higosiaka for the Padres, I guess.
Hey, maybe Austin Nola catches fire in spring training, and the Rockies have a hot trade chip on their hands.
There you go, baby. But yeah, I like that you bring it up because the NL West is the kind of that complete opposite of that AL Central, like we were talking about, where it's refreshing where you see the Royals come out and they're like, we're
Yes.
going to go for it. We're
Yeah,
going to
and they
spend money, improve our roster, and the
playoff
turnaround
team.
they have.
Yep.
Playoff team could have. Did they win the division? I always forget who wins that.
No.
Is no Guardians won it, but like
Yes. But
they
they had
compete.
Bobby Witt too.
Yeah.
They also saw that they had Bobby Witt, and they missed on some draft picks, some other big guys that were supposed to be contributors along the way. But hey, we have an MVP caliber player. Time to
Mhm.
start making this a better team around him. And they
Yeah.
did. And they became a bona fide playoff team last year.
Yeah.
Most of the other teams in the division are going the other direction, though, and that's honestly on both sides of the leagues. I say the Cubs added a Kyle Tucker, and I'm thinking that they're determined to try to extend him. If that's the thing, they're going the right direction there. But man, what have the Pirates ever done? That really kind of the rev you up, other
Yeah.
than looking into a false schemes. So
Yeah. It's where you can see in the National League West is where there's that less of an urgency to try and immediately build around the core players that they have. Royals have Bobby Witt Jr. Okay, let's go, go, go. We've got some good young pieces here. We got to supplement this and take advantage of this now. Whereas we'll get a team like the Rockies who have some exciting talent. No, Ezekiel Tovar at shortstop, Brenton Doyle in center field, but there doesn't feel like any urgency to build around those players to take advantage of these prime years. It's, well, we hope they have a good year and we'll hope we can get some young pieces in and see how and build for the future. Where the future is now, old man.
yeah, the Rockies aren't. Tyro Estrada is not anything that's going to be a big game changer for them in the offseason. They essentially replace Brendan Rodgers with a less expensive version of himself
With
to a degree.
Venezuela and Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah. So it's you mentioned it earlier. You're going to pick one of two paths. Are you going to elevate and are you going to try to become a better organization to compete with the Dodgers, or are you just not going to try? And right now, there's a lot that it can be unpacked when it comes to the Rockies. And if we're talking about trying to reinforce your homegrown talent, reinforcements are not made out of Ian Desmonds and Daniel Murphys, and that's been their ideas up to this point. So,
Yeah.
but for the most part, the Rockies are too far away, and they're looking at that Chris Bryant contract, and they're saying, no, we can't even do it. And so, hey, that's why they either have the chance to be spoilers or the absolute doormat for the division for some teams,
Yeah.
because that's the position they put themselves in this year.
Yeah, no, the top team in your division sets the tempo and sets the rules of the game for your division, and if you it's better off if you try to play their game in some way. Rockies will never spend to those levels, but you can maybe try to take the urgency and aggressive approach to building your team. But some of the other teams are in various forms.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
others are choosing the other way.
the Padres became what they are now because they developed a Tatis.
Yeah.
Remember what the Padres were? Remember the Padres weren't even the Padres of Brown. They were still the Jake Peavy Blue Padres from back then.
Mhm.
Phil Nevins and Ryan Klesko era Padres. And then all of a sudden, you have your guy, Adam Machado, do everything it takes to win. And it's because they got their guy. You either do or you don't, and there's nobody to blame or congratulate than management when the time comes. And most teams in this division are at least doing it in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun stuff in this National League West. National League West. I thought you said East. National League West. Fun stuff happening. Dodgers at least give us lots to talk about. But Kenneth, I think that'll do it here for this edition of Best of the West. And a couple of plugs here before I get to our little promotions. Be sure to go check out the banter session with Austin Imner over on the Blake Street Banner YouTube channel. Always lots of good banter sessions.
Yeah, I still need to watch that. Patrick had a lot of good things to say about it, and so pretty revealing session. Just a good series for anybody that's a baseball fan, but one that I personally am going to be checking out because it's a really good insight from everything I've heard.
Yeah, so you can go check that out. Also, Rockies Fest is happening this weekend, and Blake Street Banner is giving away 4 tickets to Rockies Fest. You can go brave the cold. So just leave a comment on this video or any video here on the Blake Street Banner YouTube channel with your social media handle to enter the raffle. It's Rockies Fest this weekend. Where Kenneth, are you heading to Rockies Fest?
I have my own little fest going on, running my rec center.
Fest.
So Kenneth Fest, yep. No, unfortunately, I will not be attending.
Yeah,
sometimes though I've been before.
Yeah, I wanted to go, but the weather's just not going to agree this year. It's the hard part of me living 4 hours away, and I have to go over a mountain to even begin the next 3-hour, 2.5-hour journey up to Denver.
To see the Rockies, Skyler has to defeat the Rockies.
It's true. I have to cross the Rockies to go see the Rockies, and unfortunately, the snow is going to allow me to do that this year. I wanted to go to that garage sale so bad.
Your time will come.
I wanted the deals, but climate change keep working in my favor.
If you're in town though and you can make it, check it out. And then get on to the Blake Street Banner and leave some comments. We'll be handing out those tickets. So hopefully somebody will be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Kenneth, where can the folks find you?
I'll be hanging out at Purple Row and also on Twitter at KW1988.
Good stuff. You can find me over on Twitter. And hey, Jesse, we approve of that.
Jesse.
Thank you very much. Everybody gives a thumbs up. There we go. Hey.
Thumbs up for Jesse too. Thanks, man.
There we go. But you can find me over on Twitter and Patrick Lyons. Be happy. New Twitter handle.
Oh.
It's my name at Skyler Timmons. That's Timmins. None of that O garbage. It's an I. That is the Irish spelling of it.
Timons.
Yeah. The German spelling is with an O. But at Skyler Timmons over on Twitter, and then at Blue Sky S Timmons 13. So good stuff. And you can find me over at purpleroad.com, and then also for fansforsports.com, where I do the Rocky Mountain Rooftop podcast with my good buddy Evan Lang.
Awesome podcast.
Yeah, we're a lot less organized than on this show. A lot more dumb bits over there, which is fun. We have a lot of good times.
Good time, good series.
Good stuff all around. And be sure to follow Blake Street Banner on YouTube and all your favorite podcasting platforms. But until next time, this has been Best of the West. And remember, the best is yet to come.